Hello, I'm back for another video. My name is Josh Kastic, and today is my Moon Knight review. Now, this show came out like several months ago, and so there's no real point on making a non-spoiler review and a spoiler review, because if you haven't seen it by now, that's kind of on you. Because you have plenty of time to see it, so that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm not going to do that. This is just going to be a complete review of just the show, of what and so now, like, since it has been out, since I haven't seen it in several months, because I saw it when it first came out, I have to do my best to remember everything as best as I can. Now, keep in mind, this is actually my third recording of this. The first time went too long. The second time was just right, but there was just problem. There was like noise and stuff like that just kind of didn't work with the way I was talking. Like sometimes I accidentally tapped my desk, and the camera picked it up, and it kind of ruined what I said. And then there was some other problems that I couldn't salvage it, unfortunately. So, but yeah, that's where it is. So let's kind of get straight to it. So I'm going to try to break this down, but like at the same time, not as much, because it's going to take a long time. So yeah. So the main character, the main character is obviously Moon Knight, but his normal person or whatever is Marc Spector / Stephen Grant. There's actually a third person. That's right. He has a split personality disorder. And there's actually another third personality, but I will that's more later into the thing. So essentially, what we have learned throughout the show is that Marc Spector is a mercenary, and he was part of a dig site or whatever in a tomb, and his partner, who was kind of leading this specific mission, decides that to change everything and there can't be any witnesses, so he attempted to kill everyone, including Marc Spector. And Marc Spector walked all the way to the tomb, and the tomb in front of a statue of Khonshu. Khonshu is the moon god of Egypt, and he fights for the innocent, to protect the innocent, and he fights for justice, and that means, taking on bad guys and all that type of thing. So he made Marc Spector his avatar, and to become the Moon Knight. So that's kind of how it is. Now, he has this suit that basically grants him increased strength, healing, and allows him to. He also has this crest of a moon on his chest that he could take off and use as a boomerang. So that's pretty cool. Now, so the show kind of starts off with kind of Stephen Grant, Marc Spector's other personality, who Stephen Grant thinks he's the main personality, and he's kind of how I say that his personality is very introverted and very he is, I don't know how to describe it, but he's bumbling, maybe, is that the best word to use? And he also wakes up with these blackouts, so he ties himself to a bed, and that's kind of how it is. And then he was late to work. He's very tardy, and he works for a museum, but he works as a gift shop clerk, and that kind of underlies his ability, his skills, because he has a intense knowledge of Egyptian stuff, like whatever you want, and like both the religion and the people and all that, and the hieroglyphs and all that type of stuff. So this is like he feels like he's underutilized, but that's kind of that's when we kind of get with the first episode. Now, he kind of blacks out and then wakes up in a field where he then gets confronted by Khonshu, talk to him. Khonshu doesn't want Stephen Grant being taken over. He wants Marc Spector, because Stephen Grant does not want, we realize throughout the show, he doesn't like the violence and all that type of stuff. And also, Marc Spector is more of, has like more of an American accent, like he's more American, where, where Stephen Grant is more British, with the English accent and all that type of thing. So you kind of see the differences there. But yeah. So he gets confronted by these goons who wants this thing called the Scarab. And we find out that the Scarab is is the lead to a Egyptian goddess named Amit's tomb. And she was sealed by the other Egyptian gods because she's kind of similar to Khonshu in that she wants to destroy evil, but she does it before they've done anything wrong. She sees in their future and swipes their life out of them, because if they are going to eventually do something evil, she wants to wipe out evil before that stuff happens, so that thing doesn't happen. But the problem with that is that, well, they haven't done it yet. They're still innocent. They haven't done that, and therefore you can't just take their life away from them for something they haven't done yet. It's not right. And so that's why she's sealed away. Well, you have this guy named Arthur Harold and a bunch of other people that follow him, and he's supposed to be the so-called the new avatar of Amit, and he's trying to summon her back. Because he feels like Amit's right. And he, as the kind of somewhat of an avatar of Amit, he has this power of this, like, old weight thing that, if you put one thing, it goes here and stuff, and it weighs it, that type of old thing. Well, he has that on his arm, and then when he touches someone, it will start weighing that person's future, seeing what they're going to do in the future. If they're going to do something bad, he immediately kills them, like right there. Like power comes from the hands into them, and then they die. And Stephen Grant witnesses this, and he kills a woman. And so this is really problematic. And then a huge battle ensues where he blanks out on we assume Marc Spector, because they try to not show Marc Spector in this one, more about Stephen Grant. And this, obviously he blanks out and wakes back up, and a bunch of people are dead because Marc Spector killed them. And then he blanks out again, and then he finds that he's in a truck and in a chase scene. And then after all this, he wakes up in his bed, and then he goes to the museum, and then Arthur Harrell shows up and tries to do the same thing to him with the power, but realizes the weight wouldn't stop. He's unbalanced. And then he sends kind of the main point of the rest of the episode is that he sends a jackal, and Marc Spector, through a kind of mirror, tries to talk to him, trying to give him the body, and he eventually gives in, and then we get to see the Moon Knight suit for the first time, and he beats up the jackal. And so that's kind of, that's the first episode. The second episode is kind of, it starts off with basically Stephen Grant being fired from the museum because on the camera it shows him destroying the bathroom and not the jackal. The jackal wasn't there. And then he with Khonshu and Marc Spector, he goes to a kind of storage area where he finds a bag of money, a gun, and a ID for Marc Spector. And Khonshu basically he wants. But he has Stephen Grant have nothing to do with it, tries to run away from Khonshu. And this is when Layla shows up. Now, we kind of got witness Layla, and we didn't see Layla in the first episode, but we first heard her name, because Stephen Grant found a phone in a hole in his apartment with a bunch of messages from Kayla. And so here we go. Kayla shows up. Now, another thing important about a phone is that throughout the first episode, Stephen Grant's calling his mother. But no, if she never calls back. That is an important detail that we'll get onto later. But that's kind of what is going on here. And then what happens next? Well, so basically they go back to his apartment. Then she grabs the scarab, and Marc Spector, they find out that Layla is Marc Spector's wife, and Marc Spector's trying to divorce her because he doesn't want her to be in danger, and that's kind of what's going on there. But then 2 police show up, find the bag, and tell them that Marc Spector is a wanted criminal, and they take Stephen Grant away. But it turns out that these police are actually working with Arthur Harold, and they take Stephen Grant to their kind of place, this place of all these worshippers of Ammit that follow Arthur Harold. But Layla shows up and rescues Stephen Grant because she has the scarab, and they can't really attack her because they want the scarab. But Arthur Harold, with this little staff thing that he got from Ammit, summons the Jackal. And the Jackal kind of goes after Stephen Grant. Now, Marc Spector's trying to tell through the mirror, because we only see Marc Spector through reflections, wants Stephen to give up the body again, but he refuses. And Stephen Grant kind of falls out of the building, and then he activates this new suit. This called the Mr. Knight suit, which is a white, tuxedo type suit that you would wear. Kind of like a suit that looks like you go to a wedding or a, obviously church or anything, but it's white. Just kind of like the Moon Knight suit. This is white, and then he wears a mask. And then it comes with, I think, bow tongs. I think that's what they're called, and he kind of fights the Jackal. The Jackal's invisible. No one else can see them. But he basically, after him not being the Jackal really well, he finally gives in to Marc Spector, and he activates and then Marc Spector takes over, and we get the normal Moon Knight suit, and he defeats the Jackal. But they realize that he dropped the scarab, and Arthur has had the scarab. And that's kind of where that episode ends. Then you go into the third episode, where Arthur Harold, where you have, and his minions are trying to find Ammit's tomb using the scarab, but Marc Spector, he now in control of the body, and Stephen in the reflections kind of goes to Egypt to stop him. Now we kind of get our first hint to a third personality when these three goons of Arthur Harold try to fight off Moon Knight, Marc Spector, Stephen Grant, and throughout this episode now it's Marc Spector kind of blinking out, or Stephen Grant trying to take control, and he blacks out, and then he sees that when he blacks back in, he killed some of them, or 2 of them, and he didn't do it. And obviously he first blamed Stephen Grant, but Stephen Grant wouldn't do anything like that. So that's the first hint for our third personality. Technically there's supposed to be 4 because Mr. Knight was supposed to be a 4th personality, but I like how they just combined Stephen Grant and Mr. Knight. I thought that was interesting, giving him a suit and stuff. I thought that was an interesting idea there. But yeah, that's kind of the main point behind this episode. Another part of this episode is that with Khonshu, Marc Spector wants to talk with the other Egyptian gods, so Khonshu kind of blacks out the sun. This automatic gets Khonshu kind of in trouble, and they get to face the other avatars of the Egyptian gods, quote, whatever. Not the main point. But Arthur Harold also shows up and convinces that Khonshu is crazy and Marc Spector is sick for having multiple personalities. So they didn't believe Marc Spector and all of them, and that's all kind of problematic. That's kind of what happens there. Then you have, so they wouldn't believe him, and they left, and so then then with the help of Layla, Marc Spector and Layla go with the Khonshu tells them to go find this sarcophagus of this person because it has this star map that allowed them to also find the place. But the person who has it is a guy named Morgoth, which actually has a past with Layla, and there's kind of problems there. But then Arthur Harrow shows up and Margot actually works for Arthur Harrow, and a huge battle ensues where Moon Knight kills Margot and a bunch of the other men. But they were able to get the star map, and Khonshu breaks another thing. Basically, the star map doesn't work because the stars slowly move over the years from which this was made. But Khonshu, being the god of the moon, he's able to turn back the sky, not actually turning back time, but specifically adding the sky to fit the stars from where it is, because he remembers that night, being, the god of the moon. So he does that, and Layla uses her technology and stuff to record it, and so now they have the map. But because he did this, the other Egyptian gods trapped Khonshu in a statue, kind of like what they did with some other Egyptian gods, as well as Amen. And that's kind of where that ends. The fourth episode is Layla, and also Stephen Grant helped with Khonshu here. Stephen Grant originally wasn't going to help them because he wants the body back, but he eventually gives in and helps them because he has the knowledge of the stars and all that stuff and what needs to be done in order to read it and everything. That is a key point. At this point, Stephen Grant is now back in control and refuses to give the body to Marc Spector, even though they lost the Moon Knight suit because of Khonshu being trapped. So the fourth episode is them going to the tomb, where Arthur Harrow and all of them is. They confronted by this weird creature that was killing some of them, and Layla had to fight it off because they split up, and Layla had to fight the creature, and she almost died, but she was able to defeat the creature. And Arthur Harrow saw this and told her that Marc Spector was there when her dad died. He was part of the group. And so now she's thinking that Marc Spector killed her father and everything. And so now we have Stephen Grant, Marc Spector. They go off to find Amen, and they find the long lost tomb of Alexander the Great. And it's revealed that he was once the avatar of Amen. And he figures that Ament's statue is in the mouth of Alexander the Great because it's the voice of Ament. And so he digs in there, gets the statue. Then Layla confronts him, and he reveals the truth that he was betrayed by his partner, who actually killed his father and everything. We don't know and everything. But then Arthur Harrow and his goons show up, and Marc Spector tries to fight Arthur Harrow, but Arthur Harrow shoots him dead. And then the last part of the episode is him kind of Marc Spector being a psych ward, like this is real reality is actually fake, and part of his dream is problems. He's actually in a war and is in a psych warp, and the person leading the psych warp was actually Arthur Harrow and everything. But what wakes him up is in Arthur Harrow's office a lot of different things, so he kind of runs away. He finds Stephen in a sarcophagus and breaks him out. And they're we see them both on screen, which is kind of cool. This is the first time seeing both of them. And then there's a third sarcophagus that was trying to rattle that they saw, but they decided to ignore it. And the episode ends with a hippo named Toret, which is Egyptian goddess of childbearing and all that type of thing. And that's kind of where it ends. The fifth episode, I'm going to sum this up because we're already 18 minutes in. So, essentially what's going on with this important episode is that basically where they're at is on the boat to the land of Reeves, which is kind of the Egyptian heaven but unfortunately none of them can go to heaven because they go to the land of Reeves because their thing is imbalanced, and so they have to go and find that imbalance. They have to go throughout their life, or the souls of these creatures from the underworld will get on the boat and drag them down and stuff. So, they go throughout. So we find out, we get to see there's a room with all the people that Marc Spector killed. But the main importance is that we learn that, reason why he has this dual personality. We learn that Stephen Grant obviously is not the main personality, Marc Spector is. And, Stephen Grant had to learn that and be traumatized by that. But the reason why Marc Spector created Stephen Grant is because when he was younger, him and his brother were kind of associated with this movie called The Adventures of Stephen Grant. And they decided to go on an adventure into this cave that was flooding. And unfortunately, his brother, Marc Spector's brother, died. And his mother, his grieving mother, was being traumatized by this, decides to blame it on Marc Spector and kind of abused him. And so in order to protect himself, he creates Stephen Grant. And eventually his mother starts ignoring him and his birthday and all that stuff, so it's really sad. But then his mother died, and he finds out that his mother had died, which even more traumatized him. And so that whole thing of him calling his mother, he had no idea his mother was dead, and that's why his mother never called him back when he tried to calling her. So that's very sad. But Stephen Grant realizes that it wasn't Marc Spector's fault. And but then they couldn't balance their souls. The creatures come up and they had to battle the creatures, and Marc Spector kind of gets captured by the creatures, but Stephen Grant helps him and he falls overboard and he's taken to the belly. He turns into a statue, and then Marc Spector goes to the land of reeds. And that's kind of where that episode ends. And it's very sad. But the sixth episode begins with Arthur Harrow getting the stone, getting the amulet, and leaving. What's it called? Layla follows him, but in Egypt there's checkpoints with people with guns and stuff. They have to check these in, and Arthur Harrow kills all of them. But then Turret talks to Layla through one of the dead bodies and tells her that she needs to get Khonshu and release him. And so now Arthur Harrow and a bunch of them go to the sanctuary of the Egyptian, or the avatars of the Egyptian gods, and kills all of them. I think most of them anyway. I'm not sure of all of them. But Layla follows him and then gets Khonshu and wakes him up, and then the rest waking up Ahmet, and then there's a confrontation of Ahmet and Khonshu. But then we get back to Marc Spector. He decides that he needs Stephen Grant, and he finally accepts him. He leaves the land of Reeves, finds Marc Spector, tries to tell him that he completes him and stuff, and then Stephen Grant awakens. Then the help of Turret in a boat saves them, and then the gate of Orsis, the Orsis opens up, and then Stephen Grant goes in there, and they get back. They become Moon Knight again with Khonshu, and Arthur Harrow officially becomes the avatar of Ahmet, and a huge battle ensues, and Layla becomes the avatar for Turret and gets the suit with wings and stuff. Pretty cool. And a huge battle ensues between a giant Khonshu, a giant Ahmet, and Moon Knight, Layla, Arthur Harrow, and a bunch of his other goons. Eventually, it just became Arthur Harrow versus Stephen Grant, or Moon Knight, and then Khonshu versus Ahmet. But with the help of all three of them, they created a spell that trapped Arthur Harrow, they defeat Arthur Harrow, put him like he was laying down. They activated a spell that trapped Ahmet into his body, and then Khonshu said that we could finally kill Ahmet by killing Arthur Harrow, but Stephen Grant and Marc Spector refused to do that, and because the deal was once they complete what Khonshu has asked of them, he would release them, and so he did. But Stephen Grant and Marc Spector believe that's the case, but then we get into a mid/post-credit scene where we see Arthur Harrow in a psych ward, and a guy kind of drags him out, and we see a bunch of dead bodies, and he puts Arthur Harrow in a limo. In the backseat, we see Khonshu, and then he reveals the third personality, Jack Lockley. And they're in a limo that window rolls down. Jack Lockley has a gun and shoots Arthur Harrow. Arthur Harrow and Ahmet, and that's where it ends. Well, guys, I tried to do my best, but that's pretty much everything. I really enjoyed the show. Like, this is like the best Marvel show. Like, but out of all of them, out of all of them so far in the MCU, this one is far the best, and I really enjoyed it. I like the characters. I like how it played out. It was a little weird as the show went on, but I still enjoyed it, and I definitely do recommend this show. It's definitely interesting. It's unique. Seeing those different personalities and being a superhero and everything is definitely interesting. Obviously, I'm not a big fan with the whole Egyptian god things and the reeds and all that stuff, but I don't let that kind of ruin me enjoying the show. And so I definitely enjoyed the show, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. If you're new, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified for my next upload. My YouTube channel, website link, my Twitter, my Snapchat, and Instagram are all in the description as always. And thank you. Goodbye.